Is it Moyes or is it the players? Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to West Ham Grumble here on West Ham Network. I've been hiding away in the shadows for a few weeks, lurking, just plotting my devilish reactions, let's say. And, after the weekend performance against Crystal Palace, I think you can bet your bottom dollar or your pound or your shekel that most of the West Ham fan base are up in arms over this. And let's face it, we've had a pretty poor season so far in the league. Yes, Europa Conference League, we're 6 of 6, 100%, reasonable performances up there. But when it comes to the league, we're either having decent performances and we're not getting the results, or we're just having really piss poor results. So what is it? What is the problem here? Is it Moyes? Is it tactics? Is it his negativity? Is it the substitutions? Or is it the players crossing the white line? They're just underperforming. They can't string a pass together. They're losing possession too quickly. They're too slow in the build-up. You know, the players are just not interacting with each other, not run off the ball. There are 101 things that you could launch at West Ham right now, and you'll probably be right, because we're not showing it, and we're not showing it on a weekly basis. Now, Moyes has gathered a team over the last 2 or 3 years that was doing really, really well. And why was that? We had a set of players that weren't superstars. They were just basically honest players for the most part. Honest players, and he weeded out those players that were supposed to be of a higher caliber, let's say, like the Andersons and the Hallers, let's say, who weren't real triers, but, you know, they were decent footballers. But weeded those out, and we just got honest players in. And guess what? The break at COVID helped us out. Antonio started knocking them in for fun, but the rest of the players were on form. They were on song. Last season, we had Antonio dropping off, but we had Bowen coming in and taking over and knocking them in for fun. We had a spirit around the club. The fan base was feeling great. We're all feeling great about ourselves. Great run in Europe. You know, another, top 7 finish last season, top 6 before. So we were kind of there. We were knocking on the door for, regular European places and having decent football at the London Stadium, but also playing good home and away. It wasn't always pretty, but we got results and we were doing all right. But now this season, we've started off pretty poor, haven't we? We've had a disastrous set of results. Then all of a sudden, we pick up a couple of wins here or a draw, and it brings us back up the table again. Then another defeat, and we're back down. But it's about the manner in which we're giving away possession. We're kind of haphazard when we're going forward, and we just don't have that kind of intensity to get after teams. We're not pressurizing. We're not pressuring them all over the pitch. Our passing is all over the place. We're not running quick enough, And when Moyes came in, he identified sort of lackluster performances, not enough running stats, all this kind of stuff. And you've got to think, well, maybe is he kind of turning a blind eye to this, or has he just kind of run out of ideas with some of these players who are just underperforming? And, underperforming is spreads like a virus. You get one player, 2 players who stop, head down and everything, and the shoulders, hunch up and everything, and they're just not in for it. Or just not up for it, I should say. And then all of a sudden, it spreads, and the rest of the team start getting nervous and start lacking in confidence. And it's kind of, just seeing an early pass, just, propping balls over the top. But it seems to be one-dimensional, lethargic. And this lack of confidence is causing mistakes. Dawson's making mistakes. Kira's making mistakes. Souček and Rice making mistakes. Scamacca not really getting much of a deal. Antonio's making mistakes all over the place. Bowen hasn't been right, all season, bar, let's say, a game and a half here and there. So what is it? Is it the players, or is it Moyes himself? Is it the backroom staff? Is it the training? Is it the game plan? There's so many fans right now up in arms saying, Moyes out, and it's just gaining momentum. And I was speaking with my lad the other day, and we were saying, look, should he go? And I was saying, look, for me, he still shouldn't go. But you've got to be you've got to be talking about this right now. You've got to be wondering how much longer has he got. Yeah, he's got the vote of confidence from the board, from the chairman, but how much longer can this go on? Our saving grace might be the World Cup break. The World Cup break, as was when COVID hit. Basically, we had a stopgap. We managed to reset during that period. Lots of players were able to rest and then just come back and just hit the ground running. And maybe that's what we need. But this is very similar. We're playing very similar to when we were playing, Moyes the first time, but he was struggling just to keep us up. But then we had Pellegrini. We threw money at it. He just didn't seem to have a clue. The players weren't playing for him. They weren't running off the ball. They weren't hungry enough. And that's what we're lacking, that hunger, that desire. Moyes this season has spent the money. The club has spent the money. And again, we're all thinking this is a great thing. Spend the money, spend millions on a Paqueta, on a Scamacca and everything. But have we kind of moved away from that? Dare I say it, I love a foreign player, don't get me wrong. This is not me being anti-foreign players. But have we moved away from that strength of a no-nonsense player, of an honest player? Have we had players that are kind of, thinking, right, okay, well, these new, better players have come into the club now. Then all of a sudden, they've got to be a lot better than me. So over to you. Show us what you got. And there seems to be something missing here. Now, I'm not saying it's a Moyes problem. But it obviously is, because he is the manager. He is the one who sets the tone. He is the one who, sorts out training. He's the one who picks a side. But he seems to be picking players that are just still out of form. And he's not picking players that are showing form, like Flynn Downs, for example, right? He's substituting Ben Rama when he was one of the only ones who was, doing all right. We're lacking in defence. We're still making lots of mistakes. Even in those games when we were playing really well, we were still really suspect at the back. We're not doing it midfield, and we're certainly not doing it up front. So what is it? Moyes has got to find a way of unlocking the puzzle, as it were. And there are too many players that have come in and they're just not performing, or they're not performing to the standard, or they're not performing to the intensity that the Premier League demands, basically. And there are lots of teams now in the Premier League that, you can't say that West Ham are better than them. Actually, you could say that many of the teams now are turning it around and they're either on the same level or a lot better than West Ham now. So we are struggling. We are struggling for form. We are struggling for final third transitions, taking a shot, getting something, accurate, playing to players' strengths. So when all this is happening and the heads go down and the shoulders hunch up and, players are getting whatever, and they're trying things and it's just not working. There's got to be somebody accountable for that. And there's got to be somebody who's got to be able to identify it and try to fix it. And that person is David Moyes, our manager, the one that we've been hailing as, the Moyes, the one, he turned my opinions around completely. But when we're not performing on every level, when we're game after game, we're having lots of issues in every position. You've got to ask yourself what is going on. Yes, we've had some really decent performances, but at this stage in the Premier League, you've got to take a poor performance and a win over a good performance and a loss, because it's points make prizes at the end of the day. It's points on the board, and we're not getting points on the board, but most of the time we're just losing out with a very poor performance in some cases, and we just can't match anybody else. Whereas in the past couple of years, we've been able to do that. Is this time for Moyes to leave? I don't think it is, because I still think that he's got a group of players there who should, on paper, be able to be a match for most teams in this league, but they're just not performing right. So it's up to Moyes now to look at the players and say, it doesn't matter what your reputation is. It doesn't matter how you might have a personal record against this team or that team. It doesn't matter how you performed in this fixture 2 years ago. Actually, it's on today's performances or it's on this week's performances. Which is the best team on performance, on form, that should be playing for us? And this is what he's got to look at. He's got to look at intensity, pressure, tactics, substitutions, but first start and 11 selection. And we've got a tough game against a resurgent Leicester now. Let's see what happens. Because if we lose against Leicester, whilst we got the big break for him to regroup and everything, he's going to come under serious pressure from the fan base, but also he's going to attract a lot of eyes from elsewhere. I personally don't want to see him go. I still think he's done a fantastic job, but this is a case of now looking where we're at, looking where the group of players are, looking within the dressing room. Who are your leaders? Who are your followers? Who are your creative players? Who are your backs against the wall players? Who are the ones you're going to rely on in a dogfight? That kind of thing. You've got to analyse those players and say, right, from now on, let's cut the rubbish. Let's cut the fancy stuff. Let's cut the back heels and Antonio doing little back heels, and turning and being found out by defenders. Paqueta, why are we playing Paqueta if he's not 100% fit and he's flying his flicks and everything like that? What about saying to Kretz, look, you've got to push the ball, a lot quicker. You've got to look at diagonal balls. You've got to look at crosses. We've got to look at crosses. We've got to play simple football, but be quick about it. Mix it up a little bit. We're just too conservative, too stagnant, too slow, and we're giving the opposition too much room. I could go on, and I'm sure you could as well. Now, again, this is a rant. Of course it is. It's a grumble. What do you expect? It's a grumble. But I'm not calling for David Moyes to go out, and I'm not calling for another manager to come in and miraculously do a better job. There's got to be something here that we're missing. There's got to be something that Moyes is dealing with, and it could be beyond him. I'm not saying he should stay there forever, but he should have the benefit, I think, of going into January and February. And if it's still not there, then maybe it is time at that point. But right now, he's got a massive job in his hands, and those players. Gotta say it, I sound like I was, 3 or 4 years ago. Those players need to start looking at themselves, looking at each other, and start taking ownership and responsibility of this, because a lot of the fan base can see where the cracks are, and we can't look at European performances. We've got to look at league performances right now, and I think we've just got to resign ourselves to the fact that this season is going to be a mediocre season. We're not going to make Europe again. I'll be very surprised if we make Europe again. Even though the table is really tight, I don't think we're going to make Europe. But I tell you what we will do. We will go a little bit further in the Conference League. I'm absolutely positive of it. Look, we're not playing there until February, March next year. So we've got lots of time to focus on the league. And if that means we sacrifice League Cup and FA Cup, you didn't hear it from me, but because I'm a great fan of the League Cup and the FA Cup in trying to push for those. But if it means actually getting ourselves sorted out for the Premier League, then maybe that's the sacrifice we have to make. Yeah, I was really up for a cup run this season, but looking at where we're at now, first things first, Moyes. Sort your dressing room out, sort these players out, and you players, you need to take ownership and responsibility. That's been the West Ham Grumble. Let us know your thoughts, and I'll catch you again. Ta-da.